Greetings, I'm Pat Symcox and I'm the owner of Remax Coast and Country, which is a real estate company based down on the KwaZulu-Natal South Coast. Okay, so I grew up in a little dusty town called Kimberley, far away in the Northern Cape, and to very middle-class, hardworking parents, and finished my matric at Kimberley Boys High School. And after that, went off to the army, came back, and as everybody does in the Kimberley area, I joined De Beers, which is the mining company, and there I started my career as a diamond sorter, diamond classifier, as people do in De Beers, and I worked there for a little while, and then I left after 2 or 3 years and joined the municipality, and I really had a leaning more to the admin side of life, and I joined the rates department, and I spent 3 years there as the assistant accountant in the rates department, and started studying an IAC diploma, which I never finished. But be that as it may, I worked there for a while. And I was at the same time, obviously, my cricketing career, there was no international cricket at that stage. So I was playing for Griqualand West in the lower section of cricket. And I'd been playing provincial cricket when I was up in the army in Pretoria for a while. And out of the blue, one day I got a call to say, would I like to come to Pretoria and work for a company in an admin capacity as an assistant accountant with an engineering business in Isando, and it meant I'd have to play some cricket. So I said, of course, I'd love to. And at about 23, I just got married. I went up to Pretoria and started working for an engineering business there for 6 years. And along the way, I'd gathered studied a little bit here and there, done some courses. And one day I opened the newspaper and I saw that there is a new private hospital group starting in South Africa. And they were looking for hospital managers. And one of the criteria was, it's quite broad. So there wasn't really any definitive qualification that you really needed or guaranteed success. So I went off to the interview and actually got the post. And they asked me where I would like. They were opening 3 hospitals at the time. I remember one was in Potchefstroom and I remember one was in Kimberley. That was my hometown. So I said I'd like to go and open the hospital in Kimberley. I went back to Kimberley and I opened the private hospital there. The company was called Medicor at that stage. They subsequently were bought out by Mediclinic. And I started in the private hospital career. I first went down to Stellenbosch Business School. They sent us on quite a long mini MBA course there for 4 months while they built the hospitals. And then I went back to the hospital, opened the hospital, spent a couple of years there, 2 or 3. In the meantime, we opened a couple of others, and I soon found myself in a place overseeing 4 hospitals. And at that stage, I was 28 or 29, and I was looking after 4 hospitals. I was really busy. And I had an issue with the one I was looking after was in Pietermaritzburg. And it really was hard to kickstart. We built this huge private hospital in Maritzburg, had a manager there, and really battling to get it going because Maritzburg, for those that know Maritzburg in Natal, it's the bastion of Grey's Hospital and Northdale and Edendale and many other private hospitals. So we as a group were really battling to get it going. So I transferred myself from Kimberley to Maritzburg, and I got there. I didn't know many people, and the one thing I could do was join a cricket club. And I started playing some cricket for the club next door to the hospital. And very soon I got a chat from a guy called Mike Proctor, who recently passed away. And he asked whether I would be interested in playing cricket. I did for Natal for 3 or 4 games, and realized at that time that I really couldn't work in the hospital business, which was extremely busy and extremely demanding, till very late at night. And then still travel to Durban and play cricket. John T. Rhodes and I used to drive through every day. And it really was quite tough. And I'd get back at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and then still have to work until 10, 11. So I gave it away. I stopped playing cricket. I retired. And I really just worked for the next year quite hard. And then there was a dramatic change happened. Mike Proctor got fired, and a guy called Graham Ford got the post as the coach of Natal. And he came to see me at the hospital, and he asked if I would consider starting again and playing cricket. At that stage, I was 31, 32, well retired twice from cricket, and he asked if I would play. He would give me some leeway. He'd pick me on the basis that I just practiced in Maritzburg on the field next to the hospital. So that was the deal I did, and I carried on managing the hospitals, and I continued to start playing cricket for Natal. And in that season, South Africa got back into world cricket in 1992-93. I was 32, well past my cricketing prime, and I was really resigned to, play a little bit of cricket and work. And there were good things happening in our hospital industry. The private hospital industry was new. I was on the National Association of Private Hospitals board, which is the board that gives out licenses. I was the hospital manager on there, hospital administrator on there, with a group of guys that would go around if somebody wanted to open a hospital in South Africa, and we'd issue the license. So I was quite entrenched, and then all of a sudden I played in a game for Natal. It was a day and night game at Kingsmead, and we were in deep trouble, and somehow I came into bat at about number 7, and I got some runs. We ended up winning the game, and I had a fantastic match. And the selectors were there watching. They came along and saw me, and they'd announced we're back in world cricket. So a team went off to India. It was Clive Rice's team. Went to go play their inaugural test, the friendship tour. They came back, and we got back into world cricket. They announced a South African team, and damn it, man, I was in this team. And I was 32. I was looking after 4 hospitals. There was no way that I could cope with an international cricket career. So I went off to see my MD in Cape Town, and he was quite adamant that I had no chance but to play, to either play cricket or work. But I couldn't stay on and managing his hospitals and still be away in places like Sri Lanka and Australia and whatever. And remember, my family is one of 3 families in South Africa, one of 10 families that have played first-class cricket in 3 generations. So, I love cricket, and my family were committed to cricket, and I wanted to play, but I also enjoyed working. I thought I was doing quite a good job. And he said, no, you can't work and play. Decide. So he gave me a choice to make a decision. It was a Monday, I'll never forget it. I left Cape Town, I flew out, and I had to give him a call by Thursday to decide whether I had played cricket or carried on working. And I sat on a plane next to a guy that changed my course of my life. His name's Bix Hertzog. He heads up Mediclinic, and he's a very, very astute business guy in South Africa. In fact, I think he's Johan Rupert's brother-in-law. I sat next to him on the plane on the way back to Durban, and I was telling him the story, and he knew who I was, and he knew that I managed hospitals, etc., because he was running the Mediclinic group. We were opposition. And I told him that I just left a meeting where I had to make a call whether I worked or I played cricket. And that if I chose the cricket, then I'd lose my job. And on the plane, he said to me, Pat, you go and play for South Africa. And when you come back, if you have a problem, you phone me as my card, and you can manage one of our hospitals. It was a defining moment, because I got off the plane, I phoned my MD and said, I'm going to play cricket for South Africa in the first tour in Sri Lanka for 5 weeks, and I'm taking unpaid leave, which I duly did. And then the next tour was to Australia, and I ended up having to leave the hospital group. And at 33, I was hoping just to play 1 or 2 series. And myself and David Richardson, the wicketkeeper, Dave was an attorney, and he had a partnership in a law firm in Port Elizabeth, and he was in the same boat as I was, really at the back end of our career, really hoping to maybe play once or twice for South Africa and then go back into the business world. And I was fortunate that my body held out, and I played for another 8 years. So at 40, I'd finished playing international cricket, but I'd had some work experience, and I needed to get back into that space. But having been in the cricketing world, and I made a debut in my cricketing career at 17, so by 40, I'd been quite a seasoned campaigner in first-class cricket, and I'd played 23 years. So I had a lot to offer the cricketing world, and Ali was the CEO, Ali Butler was CEO at the time, and he wanted me to get involved as the director of cricket for South Africa, which I did for a little while, a couple of hours actually. And I eventually went back into the cricketing space in the form of commentary. So I worked as a commentator for SuperSport, and I worked overseas for ESPN and Star Sports. quite a long time with Tony Gregg and myself and Sonny Gabasco were the three guys from ESPN. So I traveled around the world commentating for about 12 years. And then I worked out that it wasn't the life that I wanted at the time. I had a family and my son was growing up and he was playing cricket and spending a lot of time from home. And I then decided to go back into the business world, but not into the hospital space. And I had always a bit of a love affair with some property business, and I wanted to develop property. So I went into the development business and I built some townhouses in a complex and was looking to build a couple more, and worked out eventually that I was on the wrong side of the real estate business, because the money to really, to be committed to real estate in the development space was hell of a onerous. It's the long time to get your money out, the deep investment. You're battling with rain and builders and banks, and I sold one of the properties, and it was to a real estate guy who brought a client there, and they signed a deal and made as much money. He made as much commission on that deal as I was making in building the things for a year. And I realized then that I like to be on the real estate side of the business of property, and that it offered me a lot in terms of my own networking capabilities, and I was able to manage the business because I'd been in business quite a long time and I understood it, and that's how I got into it. And fortunately, again by luck, I got involved with the biggest real estate company in the world, unknown to me at the time. I really was blind to what I'd grown up in South Africa as the big real estate businesses, and Remax came along and said join us, and I then found out that I, by luck, have joined such a massive organization, and it offered me so much. And I've been doing that for 15 years and built the business on the South Coast. And I've lived on the South Coast. While I was playing cricket, I bought a property there and moved there, and lived on the South Coast and loved it. And I've just loved the feel of the KwaZulu-Natal South Coast. And sadly sat and watched from the South Coast how the North Coast has developed dramatically and the South Coast has been left behind. So that's the way it is. But I've tried to put my best foot forward at all times over the last 15 years to promote where I can the beauty of the South Coast. And it's been good for the South Coast. I think I've been able to convince quite a couple of people that it's not a bad place to come and live, around the world. And our business has grown from out of that. So I've been very blessed. And that's really the journey that got me into the real estate business. And today we've developed it over 15 years now, and we're by far the leading real estate company on the coast, and I'm very proud of that. So I'm the owner of the Remax Coast and Country franchises. I've got 5 franchises, and I'm the owner, broker owner, and principal. And my role in the business is managing the business from an overview. And I have a structure in place that looks after the day-to-day running in different spaces. We've got quite a lot of rentals, we've got commercial, we've got and sales side. So that's my role. Okay, well, look, obviously when South Africa got back into world cricket, there were some really big decisions that had to be made there. A lot of us had no work. We'd worked, but when we started playing, there were a lot of guys that were had other careers that were qualified. The founding de Villiers was a teacher, Brian McMillan's a teacher, Hansie had a degree, Jonty's got a degree, Sean Pollock's got a degree, Dave Richardson, attorney. I worked as managing. There was a strong intellectual capital inside the South African cricket team when we got back into world cricket. Craig Matthew was another one. There was a lot of us in there. When we had a senior players meeting, the intellectual capital in the room was quite strong. Wessels was himself a very astute guy. So we had some decisions to make, because we couldn't play cricket at that stage without being paid, because we were all at the back end of our careers. There were some young guys coming through, the Jontys and Alan Donalds and the Jock Callises, and those guys came later, a little bit later. But the groundwork that had to be done at that stage was left to myself and David, me from a financial side and David from an attorney side, to set up the structure so that we could go and play cricket with contracts. And there were none. South African cricket had no contracts. In fact, we had a board meeting where they they were asking us, how do we set this up? And David got hold of Alex Stewart. Yeah, he got hold of Alex Stewart in England. I got hold of Ian Healy. We took their contracts, we put them together, we brainstormed out a contract system. David and I presented to the board, then set up with Adrian Gore that South African cricket could be the first discovery guys that just launched, set up all the sponsorships, made sure we had a provident fund, and set that all up so that the next generation could kind of have contracts and play cricket. So it was quite an achievement in those times because we needed it more than anything. In the very first tour to Sri Lanka, Ali Bacher spoke with me about what he could pay the team per person, and we agreed on a figure of 20,000 Rand to go on a 5-week tour. And that was all that was available because there was no money in the kitty when we got back into world cricket. We had not been playing for 20 odd years and there was no television income. So it was quite a daunting thing behind the scenes to make it happen. But in the end, the foundation was laid, we put in the things into place, and I like to think that was a defining time for cricket then, behind the scenes, other than on the field. So that was quite an achievement, and I'm pretty proud and glad that I was involved in that, and then became the players' representative for the next sort of 7 years. So I was the go-to guy to make sure it all happened, and there were some good times and there were some bad times, and the bad times obviously was the Cronje saga in 2000 in that space. But be that as it may, overall I was pretty proud that I was able to play 100 times for South Africa at a time when I thought it was probably gone. I was a much better cricket player when I was 22, 23, 24, 25 than I was at 32. But able to play and have a career that I wanted, and then still have the beauty of going into the business world afterwards, and I've loved every minute. But I also say, I've got to say that the business world that I'm in benefits greatly from the fact that I played cricket. So I learned a lot of that, and I learned a hell of a lot managing the hospital business. Managing hospitals, there's 300-400 staff in each hospital. It never closes. Communications like paramount. It's stressful. It's like a hotel and with people that want to go home. I always tell people arrive at a hospital wanting to go home, and you can serve them whatever food you like and do whatever you want, but they want to go. So it's quite a stressful environment to work in, and I was lucky to do that when I was young, and it ingrained quite a deep sense of lots of good communication. So I'm grateful for that, and it stands me well now. But I not often, a lot of people will tell you, surround yourself with really good people. And I'm a big believer that everyone has a mentor of some sort, and I've been lucky to have one in Durban here for many years, the sounding board. Not somebody that I see every day or speak with every day, but when I make any big decision, I consult with someone that I believe will guide me in the best way. It's totally separate. And I would say to anyone that's growing in a career, is find yourself someone that you can bounce your stuff off. Because being a businessman and being an entrepreneur is quite a lonely space to be. And you make decisions along the way. Hopefully you make many more good ones and bad ones. But you will make bad ones. You will kiss some frogs. That is, along the journey, we all kiss frogs. But hopefully one or two of them turn into princesses. And I'd say, surround yourself with good people, but find yourself a mentor. The other thing I think that has really stood me in good stead, somebody shared with me, if you want to go on 40 days leave a year, would you like 70 days leave a year? And I said, geez, I'd love to work for some place that I get 70 days a year. And they explained to me, and I was young, if you wake up every day an hour earlier than everybody else, and that's 7 hours a week that you work, that you're on your own, every morning at 4, 5 o'clock, you get up. I get up at 4:30. By 5:30, I've finished my emails. I've spent some good time alone. That hour is sacrosanct. An hour or two is my special time. But that hour and a half, when you multiply it out, an hour a day, that's serious. That's good time. That works out at about 40 days a year that you spend alone, thinking about stuff that you should spend, you don't have time in the day to, where you can make decisions or look at things and see things in another perspective. And I'd say I see a lot of people that struggle in their businesses, or people that are in business or working for somebody, battling, is that they wake up late, they start late, they run hard the whole day, they sleep late, they wake up, they run from one thing to the other, and there's no real catch-up time. There's no quality time. And I'd say probably that's the most important thing that any business guy could do, is find space, find time for himself where you think. And that stood me in good stead. Many a time when I've made a decision, it's taken its time, taken time to do it. And then it's ended up being the right one because I've taken the time. Yep, it's the same business. It doesn't matter what business you're in, is to manage. I was blessed. The cricketing scene allowed me to understand the dynamics of a team. So I understand team dynamics very well. And I can understand very quickly where you fit in, because I've seen that over many years. You know, I've seen great players in a team be poor for a team. And I often use the example of a dear friend of mine, Kevin Peterson, which we all know is a Natal guy, probably the best batsman England have ever produced, but disruptive for a team. And sometimes, it doesn't matter how good you are, if you can't fit into this team, then unfortunately you got to go. And I'm big on that. Nobody's bigger than my team. Nobody, including me. So I live and die by that in the team, and people don't need to understand that. And I make it very clear every second month that if you don't fit in, then there's the FIFO policy that kicks in. So I don't tolerate that at all. And as long as we all buy into, we got the same vision where we want to go. So again, back to the team environment, understanding where everybody is, maintaining a relationship. My business at the moment, I've got 2 fantastic managers who look after. We've got 80 people selling property. So I've got and we spread along the whole coast from when you drive out of Toti through to Port Edwards. So the extent is there's 132 kilometers between offices. My 2 guys run. And they look after the day-to-day, on the ground stuff. My role is really to make sure I look after the culture. And many people have spoken, I'm sure businesses have spoken about culture and how important it is. But that's my role. My role is not putting deals together. My role is managing culture and making sure that I've got a team all focused in the same direction. And they need to understand that, we'll all have disagreements, but that is part and parcel of everything. But I've seen in the team environment where when a team is matured, when someone in the team can tell each other something that is not good for them. For instance, when a number 4 batsman plays a bad shot and you lose the match, and the number 5 is at liberty to say to him, that was a terrible shot, that you cost us the match. When you reach that level of maturity, then you really have a good team. And I try to encourage that. I encourage people to speak out against people in the team that are not pulling in the right direction. And that works. And I've seen that over and over and over again. And so that's really where I come from, is managing the team by culture. And I don't need to know the nitty gritty. And that frees me up. But again, there's an overrider to that. The size of your business. We talk about scaling businesses. But they talk about in America, in the real estate space, they talk about there's a thing called you're in death valley. A death valley is where your business is not big enough for you to have a manager and to be able to look at it from outside. You're still staying in the business. So when you're in the business, you're in death valley. And when you're outside the business and you can oversee that you're out of it. And that there's a magical number to doing that in the real estate business. So when I understood that concept, it changed the game. If you're in the business of having 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 agents in any sales game, you're always going to be vulnerable to somebody leaving you, 2 or 3 of your best staff leaving you. But when you get out of that, if you can spin yourself out of that space, then the next level kicks in. And to understand that takes a bit of time, but that's the key. Okay, so what inspires me is our I'm big on trying to help as many people as I can. I've reached a stage in my life now where the business is fine. My role is to try and find a way to help others be successful. And I genuinely mean that. I really try and connect people up for them to see some success. And what inspires me now is if I see somebody starting something and becoming successful. So I'm really inspired when I take on new people, or I see that I can help others. Now, the South Coast at the moment is at a place where I think it's turned a corner in terms of flavor of South Africa, and it's taken a long time. And I'm really inspired by what some people are doing in our space, and I need to be part of that because I've been there a long time, and I love seeing things change for the better and putting people together to make that happen. So my role now in my life is to try and find a way in some space to make things happen for other people. And I try and do that as much as I can at every opportunity. And I've seen since I've had that attitude that things come back to you, in different ways. So that inspires me in no end. And I've been lucky, and over the years, I've been lucky to mentor, a lot of people, or to help a lot of people to grow their businesses, or to change their businesses, or to just give some advice. And I love doing that. And that's the space I find myself in now, where I can help others.
Yeah, it's a good space to be in. The vision for KZN over the next 5 years, from your business point of view, not from a political point of view.
Yeah, no, from a business point of view, I'm very bullish, to be honest. I think the Cape has run hard. From my perspective, if you want to move out of the Joburg space, my market, fortunately, is quite vast. Every little town in South Africa somebody wants to come down the coast or retire. And there are really 4 options. I mean, you've got the Cape, you've got the North Coast, you've got Plek, the Mossel Bay, George, Knysna, the Garden Route place, and us, South Coast. And our value proposition is quite good because our value of properties are lower than anyone else. And our beaches are nice, and our warm water, and we've got summer for 9 months of the year. So there's a lot of good things going for us. We always got the issues of potholes, and then there's water issues, like there are in Cape Town, like they're in Joburg, like they're in Pietermaritzburg, like they're all over. We've struggled with infrastructure spend, but I really think that our time is going to come. So for the next 5 years, I'm hoping, I'm pretty confident that we will drive out of Durban towards the South Coast, and we will drive along a strip that will, in 5 years' time, look like Ballito. I'm pretty confident of that. I see that happening. I see we're struggling at the moment. I think in KZN, I think there's a change in the sugar industry, which has got a massive dynamic at play. The South Coast and the North Coast was really built up. The towns developed around the sugar mills, and that's what happened on the South Coast. Our towns are developed around the mills. So when sugar is under pressure, which it is, and that's why Hewlett went that way, developing land. We're seeing it now in the Crooks land being developed. We're seeing the Loba land being developed. And we're seeing the shift from sugar to macadamias, which, remember, sugar was a very labor-intensive business, which did well for the South Coast. So when we're seeing this change from sugar to macadamias, which is a less, intense, I see issues there. We also got a space called the Nyoma Trust land. We're pushing out many matrics coming out of the Nyoma Trust land. Vast land, many people, but they're in a poverty trap because they're getting schooled in places where there's no work. So they've got to urbanize. And when they urbanize, the urbanizing factors double in Durban. We can see it. Over the next 5 years, Durban's going to double in its population size. So if we don't watch that carefully, I think that Durban will run into trouble. The city centre is showing us that already. And more cities need to be developed to accommodate more people to get jobs. So then, somewhere along the line, we've got to find a solution to that. And we've got a vast Nyoma Trust area where we push out many school kids. But unfortunately, there's no work in those areas, and that's the poverty trap. And somewhere along the line over the next 5 years, we have to find a solution to that. And that will change the face of KZN, both north and south, especially in the Zululand area. So the one downfall, and I'm really sad about that happened, was the fact that our airport moved so far away from the south coast. And I'm hopeful that over the next couple of years, the government will somehow find a way to understand that we need an airport closer, whether it's at Scottsboro, wherever it is. But that's got to happen. And I do sit on committees where things are spoken about. So I'm hopeful over the next 5 years, you'll drive out of Durban along the way and you'll bump into another Belito standing there. And if that happens, I'll be very glad. Yes, leave nothing to chance.